Welcome to the Blue Room for this transfer special. Everton's 8th signing of the summer, and it is very much the biggest in terms of transfer fee because Tyler Dibling is through the door from Southampton. Probably the biggest transfer saga, if you want to call that, of the summer from an Everton perspective as well. But it is done. He is through the door. He's going to wear number 20. I'm delighted to say, joining me now, who's hopefully going to tell us lots of really nice things and how great Tyler Dibling is going to be at Everton, is Adam Blackmore. From BBC Radio Solent. Adam, thank you very much for coming on. How are you?
It's okay, mate. I'm good, thank you. I'm pleased for Tyler that he's finally got his move.
Yeah, I think it's been a bit of a saga, hasn't it? I mean, before we get into talking about the player, I think it'd be interesting to sort of get your perspective on that, because like when Everton's interest was reported, they bid 3 times, and it kind of felt like it was going to motor to a conclusion quite quickly, and then the clubs for 2 weeks apparently didn't talk, and then all of a sudden it's just been wrapped up very, very quickly again. It's a bit of a strange trajectory, hasn't it, this one, in regards to and fro and whether you think it's going to get done or not.
I think you can take it back a lot further, Matt. If you remember when he first started playing, when Russell Martin was manager in the Premier League last year at the start of the season, there was some nonsense talk about him being worth £100 million. That was the starting point for all this. Then there was like £50 million. And I'm like, yeah, if he keeps growing through the season, you could see that. And then after a disappointing second half of the season, which I don't blame him for, just the nature of the beast when you're in the second worst Premier League team ever and you're 18, 19 years old, his value sort of waned a bit, I think, to be honest. I mean, he got 2 goals, but it's not what Everton are paying for. They're not judging him on where he's been in the worst team ever. They're judging him on his talent and its projection. So for me, I'm glad it's finally being done. He was always the cash cow for relegation. Whether anyone would admit it or not, Saints needed to sell their most prized assets. Every time you get relegated from the Premier League, you have to sell some of your players to make ends meet. They did it last time with James Ward-Prowse and Carlos Alcaraz and players like that, and made £100 million of sales and made a £5 million profit. So you've got to shift. Maybe if you can get rid of 70, 80, 90 million pounds of the players, you probably need to do it.
Yeah, I suppose it's one of the consequences of relegation, isn't it? But you sort of said there he was going to be always going to be the cash cow for this team when they did go down. Going back to the very early days and, working around football clubs, and obviously yourself, very closely connected to Southampton. At what point did you start hearing about this lad in the academy who was sort of, close to being in the first team or was a really good prospect? Because you've had so many down the years, haven't you, players that have come through. I was just sort of wondering at the very start when you first heard about him, what was the kind of level of buzz like compared to players like, Gareth Bale, Theo Walcott, Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain? Because there has been so many, haven't there, who've come through that.
Yeah, but most of those, by the way, disappeared for next to no money because the club were in weak positions and they were going through, heading towards administration and stuff. So the Bale and Walcott sales were tragically low for Saints fans. So they never wanted this generation of Dibling to go so cheap. But the real buzz, I guess, when I really started thinking about him was actually when he went to leave, because there was talk about him being a skillful young player, but he was really small. And I was a bit like, well, how many small players of Saints Academy produce that have been rubbish? They had a succession of they went through a phase of just having technically gifted, but players with no power or pace, just small players who they rated. But of course, in the men's game, they were getting clobbered. So Dibling was good, but then he went to Chelsea. And that's when you really thought, well, actually, they must have seen something. And he went along with another youngster called Jimmy J. I was going to say Johnson, but that's not right. Jimmy. And so there was 2 of them that went to Chelsea. Dibling got homesick and then came back a year or so later. And then he'd obviously got better, but Chelsea let him come back. And he wanted to be at Southampton. So, once he'd come back from Chelsea and started playing regularly and everyone started talking about him more and more, then we knew it was just a matter of time, because his talent was so good, that he would be strong enough to play for the first team. And it was all a matter of just timing, really.
Just talk about that move to Chelsea a little bit more. I think as much as, Evertonians are really excited about this move and, can clearly see the potential there. I suppose one of the things you could maybe put in the negative column is that he did make that move to Chelsea. He did find it hard out of, the Southampton bubble, so to speak. Do you get the sense that maybe in that, it's not been a long time, has it? He's been back at Southampton, really, in the grand scheme of things from Chelsea. But again, being around the club and sort of, I imagine, knowing the player and his temperament quite well, do you get the sense that there's been like a key sort of, albeit small, period of maturing from him?
Definitely. I mean, physically, he's matured a lot, by the way. I mean, he has turned into a really strong, broader player, tree trunk legs like Jack Grealish. He's got very much the Grealish about him. We know that. But I think when you think about going to Chelsea when you're 13, 14, it's very different to being 18, 19. And I think he has matured like that. I'm not worried about the Everton move. A bit of me was, he's got to get over that new environment thing and be a strong enough character to deal with a new dressing room and deal with the change of everything around him. His family are very close. His mum and dad have been very close to him, very involved in this deal and very supportive. So I imagine they'll be with him a lot anyway. So I don't see it being such an issue. But I also think it is just part of a maturing. And when I saw pictures of him at the training ground down near the New Forest on Friday night, after all this had come out that the deal was back on, he was all smiles and happy and everything. He didn't look like a young man who was worrying about leaving, that's for sure. So I think he has matured. He's very quiet and introverted, Matt. I mean, he really is. If you interviewed him, I'm arming myself with 10 questions just to try and get a couple of minutes, because he's only young and he hasn't got a lot to say. And that, again, that will come with time, won't it? We expect too much of teenagers sometimes because they're in the spotlight. So we'll see. But talent-wise, I mean, he's a terrific player.
Yeah, and I mean, that's where I was going to come on to next, really, in regards to that ability, because I think that probably the first time I was really aware of him and heard of him was early last season when Southampton played Manchester United. And I think it was the early game on TN Sport. There was a lot of talk about him before the match. He played really well that day. And, I think Southampton should have gone ahead in that game, really, and ended up losing it. But there's a lot of buzz around. Yeah, there's a lot of buzz around him that day. And then obviously he played very well. And then afterwards as well, it kind of felt like it just built. And, again, from reading around, from Southampton supporters and journalists and looking at his trajectory so far, it feels like the best we've seen from him really was from the start of last season up until around Christmas time. What was it about then that he was doing so well and making him stand out so much, do you think?
Well, I think you're right about the start of the season. He burst onto it's all right playing a bit in the Championship, but when you play the Premier League and what comes with that, you see glimpses of what he can do, the turn, the body swerving, the balance, the skill, the ball sticking to his feet. You see glimpses of it. Then he scored against Ipswich early on, so the hype goes up, doesn't it? Then everyone's talking about those big money numbers about him, what he's worth and so on. And all that happened. And then really, of course, like I said, you have to remember how historically bad last season was for Southampton. And if you're 18, as he was until the middle of the winter, I think, a bit of me wants to say January, February, I can't remember, but you are, and the expectation on you to be the saviour is rising by the month, by the way, because there's not a lot else in the team to get excited about. Then I think it's a difficult thing to carry on your shoulders on such a poor team. So not only did he sort of fade a bit, but then Russell Martin got sacked. Ivan Juric came in with a very different ethic to how to play and the physical elements of the game and how fit he wanted the players. They were never deemed fit enough under Russell by some people. And then he played brilliantly at Manchester United in the return game on a Wednesday night, I think. And Sulemana was giving Loro all sorts of headaches on the other side. Dibling was playing well on the right. And then he got injured, Matt. And so the key was that night for me. It was his best football at Manchester United. Sulemana's best football on the other wing. Dibling got injured. And then really, once that injury, and he came back from that, and the plight of the season had got even worse and worse, he never looked interested in the same way. He never looked as involved. He never got that fitness back, I think, that he got to up to Christmas and New Year. So he always struggled a bit with that. And of course, like I said, once they're relegated, maybe he's, if people are saying to him, you want to be thinking about moving now, and then your head's gone, isn't it? So very difficult one, but yeah, he was great up until that injury at Man United. And then really, I would say, if he'd have carried on with that trajectory, I think Everton would have had to pay more than 35 million, set to start with. So it's probably fair, I think, on where he is.
Yeah, and just for people who've maybe not seen loads of him, you mentioned there in regards to Grealish, and like the look is very much the same, isn't it? The low socks, the Alice band, the hair slicked back, all those things there. But the playing style as well. I remember Grealish when he first started at Villa, and you watched him and thought, this lad's not got blistering speed. He's not like doing lots of tricks and incredibly skillful, but you could just see. I think with Grealish early doors, it was that technical ability was still really there. And he had that little burst of speed as well. You mentioned the tree trunk legs. Grealish has very much got that where he was quick enough to get away from defenders in that initial stage and then really move ahead. And it feels like there's a bit of that there with Dibling as well already.
A lot of that, I would say. I think he's probably got a little bit more pace from a standing start. He'll suck a defender in and then he can go. And I think that's a really good skill to have for a player because he can stand still with the ball and then he's off. I wouldn't say he's got blistering speed, but he's probably got more than Jack had. It's interesting with Dibling's career. I would personally say he might be better off playing a whole season in the Championship like Grealish did when Villa got relegated and getting him, he's having a dominant role and then next summer being a brilliant player in the Premier League. Whereas, this season, I imagine he's going to be behind Unai, he's going to be behind other players, he's going to be behind Grealish, but he'll learn a lot. So I think it'll be interesting to see how David Moyes utilises him, to be honest. And he's got a great manager in Moyes who knows all about looking after young teenagers better than any other coach, I'd suggest, with Rooney and so on. So I think that his trajectory will be interesting, but skill-wise, he's got talent that he does things that a lot of players just can't do. That's the thing. That's what separates him. He will win free kicks endlessly like Grealish. He will use quick feet. The ball sticks to his foot when he dribbles between players. He's got great body movement, great drop of the shoulder, really good running the ball across his body. He'll let players get tight to him. He'll roll players. I love him for that. He's got those things that wins you free kicks, but also just gets players booked and does players, and it makes them uncertain as to how tight to get to him. And if they then allow him to turn because they stay too far off him, he then gives you another problem. So I think he's got those things that other players can't do. And the reason I'm fairly confident he'll do well is because a year or so ago, and I know you won't want me to mention him because he was a Red, but Adam Lallana came back to Southampton and we had a long walk back to a hotel when they were on their pre-season camp last summer, and I was caught up with Adam because obviously he'd started at Southampton and we'd known each other a long time, and he was talking and assessing all the players that he could go on loan, he should do this. But when I asked him about Dibling, he was like, he's the best young player I've seen. He's got great talent, great ability, just needs good guidance, blah blah blah. He was raving about him, and I thought for Adam to be raving about him like that, as a pro, he must see things in his locker that maybe we don't see as laymen, So that's why I always trust that judgment more than anything. So I think he could be destined for very good things, Tyler Dibling. It will often, as in with football, it'll be about circumstances, opportunity, fitness. And, just sometimes it's moments, isn't it, with managers? Does the manager suit you and so on? Your career can hinge on decisions made by other people. So I just think he needs the chance to grow. And Everton fans, I know, having spoken to a lot every time I come to Goodison Park, you all know your football. And I know that you won't put pressure on him because he's young. I think he'll be appreciated for being young. I think he'll be given some latitude. And I think he'll need that.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I think you're right about sort of us having options in those positions behind the striker. You've got Alcaraz, you've got Njai. Like the pressure's not going to be on him immediately, which should help. But it's interesting you mentioned Lallana there because I've heard him speak and I've heard Russell Martin speak about him and a lot of other people around Southampton, and some of them seem to think he's going to end up as a centre forward. Some seem to think he's going to end up playing in centre midfield. Obviously, he's playing on the right hand side right now. Do you see a clear pathway for Dibling into a different position, or do you look at him and think, with that left foot, with that burst of speed and that close control, that he's kind of suited to just playing on the right wing as it is?
Well, it's interesting because we would normally, in the old days, Matt, put a left footer on the left wing and a right foot on the right wing. Now it's literally the opposite. So I see him as in the 4-3-3. I see him as the top right winger in a 4-3-3. But I also see him, if you're playing in a 4-2-3-1, as the 10 or the right side of that. And I know these are only technicalities between formations, but effectively, could he play as a 10? Yeah. Could he play on the right wing? 100% already does and knows it well. There was a period when he played like as an 8 with a sit-in 6 in a 3-2-8. So he's tried a few things. The one area he hasn't really played is on the left wing, so that might tell you that he hasn't got the pace to go on the outside of players like that and get the ball to the byline. But I just think it's about getting him the ball. I think with good players, you just get them, and where can we make him? Where can he have the most impact? He's not at his age brilliant at getting back and helping his fullback out. Let's be quite honest about it. He needs to develop that. Some people might say Jack Grealish was never brilliant at that, but you then have other players in the team to do that job necessarily. But he'll work. But I remember him running endlessly, chasing passes at Manchester City last season. And I just wanted to shout at him, stand still. You don't need to keep chasing like one man to the next. You know, just hold your place. And he's got that to learn about his game. But like I said, I think to have David Moyes is brilliant for him as an educator. So I think that'll be great. But I would say 10 right, and those are two. I don't see him as a centre forward, certainly not as a one-man centre forward. You know, if you think you might want to play him off a big man, maybe, but I wouldn't say he's got that burst of speed that's going to put him in behind a defence off the big man's flick on, for example. But I think if you get in the ball in high up on the pitch in dangerous areas and let him face up a fullback, he's going to cause people nightmares.
Yeah, and finally, obviously, you mentioned there that he was sort of still knocking around the group and the training ground as this move kind of entered the final stages. And, you know, in an era where players are going on strike and deleting all the social media links to clubs to try and get what they want. You know, it seems, again, like, obviously can't speak for everyone, but it seems like he and the way in which he's kind of dealt with all this has been quite, you know, well received by the Southampton supporters. And, you know, it feels like he's going to go with kind of the well wishes of most people around the football club.
I think the thing is, most people accepted that he may be the first one to go because of his value being an English young player, and the fact that you then get, you know, more money and more PSR help by selling your best English player. So everyone gets that. So that's why there was an acceptance that he's more likely to go. The difference, just to share with you for Southampton fans, is that a lot of them are saying, right, we sold Dibling, now we don't need to sell Fernandes. Yeah. The problem is, I think they're probably going to end up selling both. So it's whether you can placate the fans with the purchases between now and next Monday. But I mean, he does go with everyone's good wishes. I think the fans are accepting that was always likely to be the case when they got relegated. So I think anyone just wishes him well. And why wouldn't you? He's 19 years old, for goodness sake.
And just very finally, Adam, before I let you go, you mentioned Carlos Alcaraz there. Just be interested to get your thoughts on him as well, because, you know, at the start of the summer, we got him through the door for 12 million. Everyone thought he was going to be a key player. Everyone was delighted with how he did last season, and, you know, came in and scored some big goals, scored on the last day at Newcastle, and it felt like a snippet, 12 million. But all of a sudden, you're looking at it going, well, not entirely sure where he gets in the side, but seems like a really good player to sort of have around, good options to be in the squad, and relatively versatile. And again, somebody who seemed very popular for how he did at Southampton.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in a bad team, he stood out. But really, funnily enough, I mentioned Mateus Fernandes as well, the Portuguese midfielder at Saints, who I think is better than Dibling. But he's very similar to Alcaraz. Gets the ball, drives, runs with the ball, makes ground, box to box, bit old school box to box like that. I think Alcaraz is that. He's also got a great, a sparky personality, should we say, Alcaraz. You always see him getting sent off every other game, which I love about him. He's got an edge to his game. And I like Charlie Alcaraz. We all liked him at Southampton. We thought he was a threat in the air as a header of the ball towards goal, certainly shooting from distance and driving with possession. But I think a player like him, he only suffers because of formations. Like, if a manager doesn't want to play with that sort of 8, if he wants to play with a 6, and then if he wants, 2 sitters and then but again, he would be the 10 in that role. He'd be at the top of the triangle of the 3 midfielders. So Alcaraz, for me, is a really good central midfielder who will arrive in the box and play box to box in that lovely way that we don't see enough of these days. And again, like I said, if he's not playing in the Everton team, that's purely bound for formations for me. Really talented young man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Plays with a smile, I like that about him.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think everyone was really pleased to get him in, but we signed so many attacking midfielders now. It's one of them. Where'd you fit them all in?
Again, he's not blessed with the pace of Ndai, is he?
No.
And he's not coming off the wing like Jack. So where can he play? It's really 10 or 8. So he's definitely central. He's not going to be a wide player. And you need to get him running at defenders with the ball, really. And like I said, arriving in the box, but he'll make tackles as well. He's like you said, he's a handy bloke to have around, and he was a snip at the price you paid.
100%. Adam, really appreciate your time, mate. Very, very excited about Tyler Dibling after hearing that.
Well, let's hope I'm right, Aid. He turns out to be an England international with 100 caps, and you're happy as Larry.
Yeah, not too fussed about England. Take or leave that. But if he plays loads for Everton, he does loads for Everton.
Look, what an opportunity for him! That new stadium and a new era at Everton. David Moyes back in, like I said, as a wise old head to guide him. I don't think he could ask for much more as a platform to grow from. So I think he's in a great place, and hopefully with better players around him, we'll see him shine more and more.